We'll now move into the informational items this afternoon and start with C1, our Back to School 2020. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Henry County community. I'd actually like to begin informational item number 1 with a brief opening before I'm turning it over to a series of additional presenters. And after each presenter, we will have time for discussion among the board if that's of interest to the members of our Board of Education. But you know, the last time that we came together as a team, it was August 31st of 2020, and it was at that time that the Board of Education unanimously approved the plan to begin reopening school campuses for students who would select an on-campus learning environment. However, the preparation for that eventual date did not just start in that moment. No, we have been preparing for that likelihood since long before that last day of school in May of 2020. And we continue to evolve, to get better, and to continuously improve every aspect of our readiness as a system. Now, we know a big, important, and vital responsibility right now is to sustain an effective remote learning environment and to allow that option for families to be a strong and viable option to continue a high-quality education. But we are simultaneously preparing for a safe, a healthy, and an effective on-campus learning experience for families who select an on-campus learning environment. As I move to the next slide, I do need to begin, as we do our board conversations, by referencing the compass for Henry County Schools. Now, this compass consists of the core beliefs and commitments of this Board of Education, the plan of action, and our newly adopted strategic plan. But what this slide really represents and reminds me of is that our core business always has been, always is, and always will be students. And that we are committed to an exceptional education through the board's direction and the board's expectations that even in the most challenging of times, goes uncompromised. So whether learning in a remote environment or on campus, our Henry County Schools professionals are rising to new levels of impact, and they are thriving despite the complexity of teaching and learning in these times. So today, we have 4 main objectives in the series of presentations that the board will hear today and the discussion that will follow. The first is to acknowledge that this work in this season is particularly complex. There is no other way to simplify it. That number 2, we as an organization have rigorously prepared to give families an option of whether to continue in a remote learning environment or return to on-campus learning. Number 3, we have incorporated the perspectives of teachers and leaders and employees in each job family, and we have encouraged employees with additional solutions to share those solutions with your supervisor to be incorporated into the greater direction of our organization. And finally, at the conclusion of our conversation today, I believe that you will join me in believing we are ready. We are ready for students to return to on-campus learning if families choose to on September 28th, and we are excited. So just as a quick walk down memory lane, what you see on the screen is our timetable. Today was the start of Phase 1. It has been a great day in Henry County Schools where all of our school-based employees have returned to the work site and were permitted to bring their children to the work site and remain under the supervision of one's parent. But Phase 2 will actually begin immediately following fall break. Our fall break is intact the week of September 21st, and on September 28th, after fall break, we will welcome students back to a student orientation. Now, learning will continue. However, there will also be an opportunity for students during the orientation to learn the procedures and the protocols that contribute to the COVID-19 mitigating expectations. Now, our students who are served in a self-contained program will return for 5 days of orientation that week, while all other students in elementary, middle, and high will follow a split schedule based on their last name and the alphabet split that has been presented. Now, Phase 3 begins on October 5th, and that is when all elementary and middle schools will be back 5 days a week for a full schedule, and we will maintain the split schedule for our high schools at that time. And on phase 4, which has a date still to be determined, high schools will join our other levels, our other elementary and middle school levels for that full week of schedule. Now, there are 180 school districts in Georgia. And of that 180, there are only 28 that have not begun their face-to-face environment for students. When we open our doors to students on September 28th, we will be the 153rd district in Georgia to make on-campus learning a possibility. Now, although the selection window for families has closed, we are, of course, working with any family that has changed their mind or any family who was not able to submit their selection during that time window. And as of today, I'm happy to report to the board that 64% of our families chose a remote learning environment, and 36% of our families have selected an on-campus learning environment. So as I continue walking down memory lane, I want to bring your attention to two key components of the Henry County plan to reopen schools. You see pictured the Henry County Schools reopening plan. That is available on the district website. We're going to tour that towards the end of our series of presentations today. But you also see our return to school playbooks. These are intended to operate in concert with one another. This is the comprehensive look of how facilities have been adapted and how we have prepared to return. Now, our model actually includes our district playbooks being further customized at the local school with what we call a local school playbook. That's sort of an implementation workbook, so to speak, where our local schools are really customizing the standard design for facility adaptation and protocol, and we'll talk a little bit more about how those are evolving as well. Now, of course, our plan includes the monitoring of specific COVID-19 conditions. We are, of course, did not start school on campus because of the conditions of COVID-19 in our community. So I'm going to invite you to the 4 key COVID-19 health metrics that we have identified as working in an integrated way. No one metric in isolation will make a decision one way or another. And we are looking at the new positive cases in Henry County over a 14-day period. We are looking at the new positive cases daily average over a 14-day period. The hospitalization rate, which is an indicator of the severity of cases as well as the infrastructure of your medical community to manage the health condition, as well as transmission rate per school once schools are opened. We believe it will continue to be true that there is no safer public place to be than in a Henry County school, even as we start to navigate opening schools during a worldwide pandemic. Okay, now we have committed to sharing these data points publicly and updating them on a weekly basis. So let's take a quick navigation of our Henry County Health Dashboard. This is for all 239,000 residents in the Henry County community. And if you could start by just scrolling over the top left, these are the total cases since March in Henry County. This is all of our community. This will always be increasing. This is an accumulating number that will always be on the rise as it is a raw count over time. But let's go down one data point and look at the 14-day new case rate per 100,000 residents. This is the data point you hear very often on the news, and this is the data point that a lot of districts are looking at specifically. That highest bar, that is the darkest purple, that you see towards the center of that bar graph, actually represents the reporting week of July 17th, the week when this Board of Education did decide to delay the start to school and begin with a remote-only option. But if you could just look at the very promising outlook that has continued to unfold in the weeks following, you can see we have hit a record new low on the 14-day new case count, and as a matter of fact, are actually entering pre-June numbers. That is the kind of trend we had believed to be possible, and we believe is a part of our entire community coming together in order for us to open schools responsibly. So the next data point comes from the Harvard Research Review that recommends also using a daily average of new positive cases over that same 14-day period. As you can see, we have dropped to an all-time low of the new average cases of COVID-19 here in the Henry County community, now standing at about 8.7 new cases on average over the last 14 days. The Harvard Research Review is recommending that communities be nearing 25 per day as they consider opening schools. And you can see how well above average Henry County community is doing on that metric. Okay, and I'll be brief on the next two. They're really just different ways to look at the same numbers. This is your raw count of new cases since last week. Of course, it's going to show that same trend, pulling from that same data source. But importantly, we are looking at numbers that are now nearing that 100 per 100,000 cases mark, and that is a very promising trajectory for our community, and it represents just 0.06% of our entire community being impacted with a new COVID positive case in the last week. I just want to point to these data points as one, important for us to continue monitoring, also important for us to continue using it as a matrix of multiple data points, but also as an expression of my gratitude to the greater community who has joined us in this belief that our schools having the opportunity to reopen is an opportunity for all of us to contribute. Okay, so the last part of the data I do want to share with you is really how are we reporting any positive COVID cases that happen within this organization, within the schools. And so if we go to the next slide, this is a data graph or a data chart that is on the district website, and it will evolve over the next 2 weeks to be a report by school now that we will have our schools reopened. And if you can see, the week of September 7th through 13th is the last week, and you can see that of our 43,000 students, there were 5 new cases of COVID. Out of our 6,000 staff members, there were 2 cases of COVID, and the total implication of quarantine was a total of 20 individuals subsequently quarantined. We are committed to responsible distancing, washing up, and wearing our masks, and believe our commitment to mitigating protocols is assisting in our management of the spread of COVID. Okay, so we are now on the brink of getting ready for these doors to be opened just like they should be for the youth of our community. And in order to continue to make sure we are improving and assessing our preparation, this coming week, there will be a readiness assessment conducted by public health officials in our community. We will tour a cluster of schools to examine all of the mitigating techniques that are in place and seek feedback from our executives at Piedmont and Henry, our pediatricians in the community, and our Department of Public Health partners, along with our lead nurse here in Henry County Schools, Amy Rivers, who, as an aside, is an absolutely phenomenal leader and lever in this entire responsibility we have as a school system to now navigate a pandemic. But before I turn it over to each of today's presenters, I'd actually like to show a video that should bring a lot of this to life as we really not just imagine children walking the halls of our schools, learning directly from our teachers, but actually visualize it. So can we play that video?
We've missed you. The most exciting part about starting any new school year is welcoming you and all of your friends back to school and back to new and exciting experiences, new faces, new teachers, new challenges, and lots of learning. This year, we found a new way to start school. We are together, but not yet back together. As we prepare to gradually return to school, we have an opportunity to work together, do our part, and keep Henry healthy. By working together, we can keep all of our friends and families as safe as possible. We can protect ourselves, our families, and our communities. Are you wondering how we can do this? Well, let's take a look. Keeping each other safe starts at home. We need to watch for signs that we don't feel well and ask our families to do the same. We need our temperatures checked every day before we go to school. If we are warm or don't feel well, we need to stay home and get checked out. If we feel great and ready to learn, we need to make sure we're ready for the day. We need our masks and our water bottles, and of course our backpacks, books, and devices. Ready to go to school? Okay, mask up. If we're riding the bus, we need to make sure to follow all the new instructions to keep each other safe and healthy. When you're waiting at the bus stop, remember to keep your distance from your neighbors and other students riding the bus with you. Our bus drivers know just what to do. Listen to their help and stay spaced out as much as possible. Since you're no longer just around your family, the bus is the first place that you will need to make sure you are using responsible distancing and not getting too close to your friends. Close enough to say hi, but far enough away that we aren't touching. That will help us all stay safe. Loading the bus is easy. Make sure you have your mask on, and if you get on first, go all the way to the back. Whenever possible, you'll get a seat all to yourself so you can stretch out. How awesome is that? If you're not the first one on, take the farthest seat back that is still a seat away from your friends that boarded before you did. That way, you won't have to walk past each other or get too close. When you leave the bus, you do the opposite. If you were the last one in, you're the first one out. Makes a lot of sense, right? Everyone knows what to do and when to do it, and we still keep from walking past each other on the way out. That helps keep us safe. Our bus drivers care a lot about our safety. Every time we leave the bus, they make sure it's cleaned and sanitized and ready for our next trip. They have a ton of responsibility, and we want to do whatever we can to help by listening and following instructions. If you get to school by car, what's the first thing you do when you arrive? That's right, mask up. As soon as you say goodbye to your family, you'll make sure that your mask is on and follow your friends inside. Make sure to keep a safe distance from the friend in front of you. We all have to make sure that we use responsible distancing to keep each other safe. Responsible distancing is so important to keep our schools safe and healthy. We will hear reminders to stay distanced and keep our mask on all day, and we need to help remind each other too. Whenever we're heading to our classes, to get our breakfast or lunch, to the restroom, we need to make sure that we give each other some space and keep some healthy space for ourselves. Be sure to look at the signs placed around the schools that remind us to stay distanced and move in the right direction. If you still don't know what to do, ask a friend or a teacher or an administrator. Everyone is pulling together to make our on-campus school experience the best and safest it can be. Another important way that we can help keep everyone safe, especially ourselves, is to wash our hands frequently. We'll have plenty of opportunities to get a good 20 seconds of scrubbing in between our activities. When we can't get to a sink, using a hand sanitizing station is quick and easy. Using the hand sanitizing stations for a quick clean, especially after touching a surface or handling something others have touched, is a great way to stay safe. When we're in our classes, we should follow instructions so we know where to sit or stand. Eventually, we will do it without thinking about it. But when we are learning, listening is very important. Sometimes our learning will be in large or whole groups when we are learning together. Our friends that are learning from home will be involved too. We will have to be extra helpful to make sure our teachers can teach all of us. Sometimes we may need to be a little more patient, but we will all get what we need. When we learn in smaller groups, we will still need to be responsibly distanced. Our teachers have been planning for weeks for us to come back in our buildings. And if we all do our part, we'll have the best learning experience we can have. Our friends will be right there with us, just not too close. We can still talk and laugh and learn, but with our masks on and in our healthy space. What happens at lunch? Can we still be safe and healthy when we're all going to lunch at the same time? Of course! Our school lunch staffs have found lots of ways to make sure we all get fed and stay responsibly distanced. Whether we eat in the cafeteria or in our classrooms, if we follow instructions, we'll all be happy, healthy, and full. As we prepare to head back into our school buildings or continue with our remote learning, we all have the opportunity to do our part and keep each other safe and healthy. Wash your hands frequently for 20 seconds or use the hand sanitizer located throughout the school. Watch your distance and keep space between your classmates, your teachers, and other people who work at your school. And wear your mask. Together, we are going to make this our best and most memorable year yet. Join us as we keep Henry healthy.
Awesome, thank you. Now, I'd be remiss if I did not recognize our communications team. I think they're all actually here today. Kevin and David and JD, RC and Sybil. The communication that has been necessary through this entire season is absolutely paramount, and their work has been exceptional. So thank you for that video. Now, that video, first of all, was narrated by a theater student at Dutchtown High School named Jordan Wiggins. And of course, Henry County students starred along with our professionals. And this video has been prepared for distribution to all of our families and all of our employees, but will also be a part of the training experience that all students receive during that orientation week when they come to on-campus learning. So as I wrap it up and prepare to transition to Mr. Malcolm, it's really an awareness that at each phase in this season, we learn, we listen, and we evolve. It's our commitment to continue to walk through this challenging and uncertain time together as a community with a shared belief that all children should have access to an exceptional education. Mr. Chair, that concludes my portion that has been prepared. I can remain available for discussion, or we can move directly to Mr. Malcolm.
I think we can move directly to Mr. Malcolm, Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'd like to invite Mr. Malcolm to the podium to present informational item 1A. Mr. Malcolm.
Sorry. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Davis. Today I want to provide a brief update concerning both transportation and facilities and maintenance progress that coincides with the day in the life video as we prepare for a return to in-person instruction. A quick side note, this picture represents one of the more than 29,000 social distancing reminders that have been placed by our facilities and maintenance department as we prepare. As we begin final preparations for providing bus transportation to those who have chosen it, our transportation staff, bus drivers, and monitors have been engaged in training over the past 2 weeks concerning enhanced safety procedures in response to COVID-19. These measures include masks being required for students, drivers, and monitors, modified loading and unloading procedures, responsible distancing through assigned seating where possible, sanitization of high-touch areas that will occur after each route is completed, and finally lowering the windows to allow for fresh air as weather permits. In addition to the enhanced safety procedures being implemented by our transportation department, drivers and monitors have also received training concerning the Synovia K-12 Transportation Alert Info System and enhanced camera system for all of our school buses. Features provided for the Synovia system include the Here Comes the Bus app will be available to all parents who have children that use our transportation services. You can see some of the notifications that will be available on this site. It's the middle picture. That's Mr. Murray Chambers, who is our Director of Transportation, and we've been doing some testing of that as we prepare. Parents can utilize the app by creating a login that is linked to their child via name and student ID. Once the login process is completed, parents will be able to see the bus their child is assigned to. And then we haven't sent it out quite yet, but that's the picture on the left there of some of the information that we'll be sending out. Parents will have the ability to personalize the app for notification when the bus is in a specific radius of their address. Notifications will also include late buses and bus substitutions. Transportation will be able to push notifications to a single family, specific bus load, a particular school, or the entire district. The Synovia system also includes new GPS hardware and equipment on buses. A tablet has been installed on each bus by which drivers will log in. This will provide for automated time and attendance. Buses have also been equipped with turn-by-turn navigation to assist in route running. Concerning the upgraded camera system, special needs buses have a 3-camera system, 72-passenger buses have a 5-camera system, and 90-passenger buses have a 6-camera system. And these have all been installed at this point, and they are functional. Each bus has one forward-facing camera and one camera for the driver's compartment and service door. The remaining cameras provide coverage for all student seating. Finally, the cameras provide HD quality recorded footage. You can see a few pictures on the right there of some, we just pulled a couple off. You can see how it really will encompass all of the bus for us moving forward, in addition to our driver and the compartment in which they come in. Shifting to progress being made by our Facilities and Maintenance Department, I want to start by once again reviewing physical adaptations that have been previously provided to the school. You've seen this slide before. Social distancing reminders, front office shields, sanitization stations, signage, and increased air filtration practices. Since our last update, we have implemented a number of additional adaptations for schools. These include 1 shield for the clinic and 2 shields for common serving line areas. Directional signage as requested by schools in relation to local playbooks, disposable masks for schools and buses, and additional sanitization stations placed in main office areas of schools. Finally, I want to take a moment to review with you a few of the cleaning and increased sanitization practices that are being implemented by our custodial partner, SSC. Please note the entire SSC COVID-19 strategies document can be found as an attachment to the Return to School Playbook Phase 1 on the Henry County Schools website. While the document provides details concerning products and equipment to be used, enhanced cleaning practices, and procedures for cleaning, I'm going to focus briefly on the disinfection portion of the strategy inquired about at our most recent meeting of August 31st. Attachment A, labeled Frequency Schedule of Disinfection, shown here, lists 12 different spaces and the rate at which they will be disinfected daily. As part of Attachment A, classrooms will be disinfected 3 times per day. Attachment B provides a visual representation of areas that are considered key touchpoint areas in classrooms, restrooms, administrative spaces, and gym areas. As you can see, for classrooms that are utilized, student desks and chairs will be a part of the disinfection schedule. In closing, I mentioned during the last update that this has truly been a team effort. That effort continues as we ready the campuses for in-person instruction. As our plan continues to evolve, many stakeholders have been instrumental in development and implementation of measures shared today. Dr. Davis, this concludes my report, but I remain available for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. Mr. Chair, that concludes what we have prepared, but remain available for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. I want to, before we move into questions and comments, I just want to remind the board that the last time we had this lengthy of agenda, we went over into the business session. So just when you're asking your questions and comments, let's just try to keep that in mind. With that being said, Ms. Cobb, do you have a question, comment?
Yes, thank you so much.
I apologize. I was just saying, if you'll remember the last time we had a meeting and we had an agenda this lengthy, that we went over into our business session about 30 minutes, and I do not want that to happen again for the viewers and our audience. So as you ask questions and comments, let's just keep that in mind as we move forward. Ms. Cobb?
Thank you so much. I really just wanted to take an opportunity and publicly thank you for all of the hard work that you've done. And I'm so excited about this Here Comes the Bus app. I cannot wait to see it actually in action as our students get to ride, and just the feedback from parents, because I truly believe it's going to be helpful. And I did want to share with you just quickly how much you were praised when I had an opportunity to attend New Hope Elementary School recently. The principal there was just so impressed with the SSC team there and just their diligence to keep up with their sanitization schedule. She said they were like clockwork, and just really impressed with the team there. And I feel really good about that and all that you just shared, and looking forward to having our kids back on campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Ms. Pope?
Yes, thank you. I also just want to thank you, and I want you to just give a huge air high five to your team, because I know that this work has been very time consuming, but it is so appreciated. And I'm also really grateful for the partnership with SSC and how committed they are to ensure that our students and our staff are safe at school. So thank you to them also. And the transportation updates, actually seeing them come to life now is just really exciting. These cameras are really impressive. I know that it's going to help our bus drivers and parents to feel safe as their students are going back and forth. So thank you to you and your team for everything.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Mrs. Edwards?
Thank you. Thank you for that report. Lots of information. Now that we have the numbers in, Dr. Davis mentioned that 64% parents decided to keep their children home for remote learning. 36% will be on campus. What does that? So, would the buses be running on a regular schedule as they did before with the 36%?
So we're still analyzing the data that's come in on people who have chosen to come back to school, and on top of that, the numbers are even lower as far as choosing transportation. So we're looking at that, but generally, yes, in the beginning, we will run the same routes. We will just have less children on the buses to provide for responsible distancing where possible. So you will see, and then as we get into it, we might be able to adjust some of the routes based on ridership and what we're seeing as far as picking up students. But yes, in the beginning, you're going to see us run our routes, our elementary, then high, then middle routes.
Okay, I'm looking at the schedule for phase 2, and when I look at K through 5 and in 6 through 8, it says A through H, Mondays and Tuesdays. Mm-hmm. So buses will be running those 2 days.
Yes. Yeah. So phase 2, I believe, is the initiation period or the acclimatization period. So we will run buses Monday, Tuesday of that week, and Thursday, Friday of that week. And then we will get into K through 8 that have chosen to go back are 5 days a week. And then high schools are on the A through M, N through Z schedule. Yes, we will, but we will still run the bus routes.
Okay, what about the ESC students? Those are different buses, am I correct?
They will be run as well. And we're working with April Madden and her team as far as who has signed up for transportation services through ESC.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Mrs. Edwards. Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. Dr. Davis, C1B.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'd like to invite Ms. Willis to the podium to present informational item C1B, our school nutrition and after-school enrichment program update.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Superintendent Davis. Financial services includes 2 essential programs supporting our students and families of Henry County community. And those are the after-school enrichment program and the school nutrition program. So soon after the phases were introduced, but prior to specific dates, I embarked on a listening tour to gain some insight on what the staff of these awesome programs were wondering about and their thoughts on our staggered and gradual return of students. These programs are ready to fulfill your approved on-campus plan to return students. So let's start with the after-school enrichment program, or as we commonly refer to it as ASEP. So ASEP is ready to launch in phase 2. When students return for the orientation period. The tuition for phase 2 will be prorated for the 2 days the on-campus learners are at school according to their last name. Beginning the next week in phase 3, ASEP will be available 5 days a week for our on-campus learners. Our ASEP leadership team is working closely with each school to carry on the continuity established during the school day to keep Henry healthy. While the daily schedule in ASEP will still include snacks, homework assistance, and enrichment activities, the schedules will be guided and pre-approved by the ASEP district leadership team. This will once again ensure the program is following that district's return to school or back to school playbook. We are excited that almost half of our projected enrollment of ASEP students will be returning to the program. Cindy Green is our coordinator of after school, and she's partnering with principals for any questions that their local community may have. From arrival to dismissal, we are walking through the ASEP experience, observing a safe and healthy environment while keeping it enjoyable and engaging. So let's move over to meals and our fabulous school nutrition program. These heroes have not stopped serving meals to our students, and they're going to continue to serve all students, remote and on-campus learners, during this hybrid learning model. So we recently received some great news from USDA that has extended meals to all students, free of charge. This extension is in effect through December 31st of this year as the federal funds remain available. So just as in the spring, this is for every single one of our students, whether they are on-campus learners or remote learners. So beginning in phase 2, which is the week of September 28th, our school nutrition staff will serve meals at each and every school location. Families of remote learners will continue to pre-order those meals, and the Wednesday curbside pickup will remain. We know that many families have remote learners in multiple schools, and there will be accommodations for families to visit just one curbside meal location. We're working with leadership services and our principals for serving models, staffing needs, as well as capturing meal counts to comply with federal and state regulations. So just as our after-school program, school nutrition is prepared, and we're going to maintain flexibility. But we're also going to nourish that student achievement. Dr. Davis, that concludes what I have prepared.
Thank you, Ms. Willis. Mr. Chair, that concludes what we have prepared, but remain available for discussion.
Thank you, Mrs. Willis. Does any board member have any questions or comments for Mrs. Willis? Mrs. Edwards?
Thank you. Ms. Willis, could you explain, starting September 28, 2020, tuition will be prorated for phase 2?
Absolutely. So that's that first week of that orientation period for our elementary students with the last names. And so they'll be going 2 days a week. So therefore, the tuition will be prorated for a total of $20 for that week instead of the total of $50.
Okay, so as long as we're in phase 2?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That phase 2 is that 1 week.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Edwards. Any other questions or comments? Dr. Nutt?
Thank you for y'all's hard work, because I know how this has been and trying to figure out how many kids are coming back to after school and where are they going to be. Y'all have done a tremendous job, and I just appreciate everything that you, and I know Miss Cindy has worked just terribly hard, and her sidekick, Miss Milford, I know they've done a great job. So thank you. And of course, our cafeteria, our nutrition department, they haven't stopped. They've not missed a beat this summer. And, and it's great food too. So I don't know how I know, but I know it's been delicious, and we appreciate their dedication to our children and to the school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nutt. Thank you, Mrs. Willis. Dr. Davis, we can move to C1C.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'd like to invite Dr. Blanton to the podium to present informational item C1C, a technology update.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Superintendent Davis. Thanks for the opportunity to provide an update related to the family learning option selections, and also to provide a report on some of the hybrid learning support that we're going to be providing for our teachers and our school leaders. Of course, we began this school year knowing that we wanted to give our families an option in terms of a learning model. To either choose the option for on-campus learning or to remain in remote learning. And during our last meeting, I explained the process for families to select that student learning option. So we have received at this point about 36,000 responses, representing approximately 84% of our enrolled students. So our survey participation has been very high. And based on this process, we have approximately 36% of our families indicating that students will be coming back on campus for the at-school learning option, and 64% remaining in the remote learning option, as has been stated earlier. Of course, those coming back on campus, we will have a little over half of those requesting transportation services, and about 21% of those coming back at the elementary level will be participating in the after-school enrichment program that Christy just shared with us in her update. These numbers affirm the work of our schools and what they're doing to build strong hybrid instructional learning models, and also affirms the work of our district leaders to support those models. Having begun this school year fully remote, we had a great opportunity to not only work through some of the early technical issues, but this remote start has also helped us to build a strong hybrid learning model out of that remote foundation. Missy will be sharing the work of learning and performance to build content-specific toolkits. And as a complement to this work, our instructional technology team has worked to build an instructional technology toolkit that will include videos and documentation of classroom models in various scenarios for teaching and learning, sample lessons that focus on best practices for devices in student connectivity success, and technical frequently asked question support. We have already had a chance to share this toolkit with teachers and principals, and the feedback we're receiving indicates that this is going to be a great support for our teachers and our administrators. The toolkit will supplement the ongoing support we're providing in the form of continued teacher and administrator office hours, periodic teacher newsletters, professional development sessions for faculty, meetings, grade level meetings, small groups, and working individually with teachers as needed. And we'll continue our site-based technician and instructional technology support for our teachers and our students and school leaders. So as we move toward the September 28th return of students to our campuses, our team is prepared and eager to support our teachers, our school leaders, and our students as we move into this season of hybrid learning. So thank you, Board and Superintendent Davis. This concludes my report this afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Blanton. Mr. Chair, that concludes what we have prepared, but remain available for discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Blanton. Does any board member have any questions or comments for Dr. Blanton on C1C? Ms. Cobb?
Thank you so much. I really just wanted to say thank you. I know you've had such a big job really all summer and in preparing for the school year. And we all knew, even when we brought the students back into the classrooms, that the remote option would still be so critical to students learning this year. And just really want to thank you and your team for all of your hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Ms. Pope?
Yes, I also just want to thank you. I'm just amazed at what y'all have been able to make possible for our students and our families and our teachers. So thank you so much to you and your team for your hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Dr. Nutt?
I have just a special shout out, and now I cannot remember your technician's name, but he left here on his lunch hour and went to Locust Grove, and he fixed a parent's computer. For her, she was having trouble getting online and she had 3 children in all 3 grade levels. And so as soon as I can remember his name, I will let you know. But that's the kind of dedication you have in your, in working with you. And she made it a special point to call me and tell me how much she appreciated technology, taking their lunch hour to come and help her and her kids. And she said now they're doing fantastic. And it was something that, it could have been fixed, but she didn't know how. So thank you and your team.
Thank you, Dr. Nutt. Mrs. Edwards?
Thank you. Dr. Blanton, what percentage of after school you said will be participating?
Of those who are returning to campus, about 21%.
How much?
21.
Oh, 21%. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Edwards. Thank you, Dr. Blanton. We can move to C1D.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'd like to invite Ms. Sue Smith to the podium to present informational item C1D.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Superintendent Davis. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an update of where we are with FY21 staffing. We have given you updates over the past few months on several of these responsibility areas under HR. While we probably need to add another oval that's called COVID, today I'll give you some information on year-to-date staffing numbers, staffing partnerships, and the status of the return to work process. Nothing has changed with staffing hotspots. There continues to be too few teachers in the labor pool for exceptional student education, math, science, and world languages. However, we did start the school year with 6 teaching vacancies, which is the lowest number of vacancies at the start of school that we have experienced in my recent memory. Out of the 451 certified staff hired, 410 are teachers. 116 of our new teachers are first-year educators. And as a side note, our teachers new to the profession are getting lots of targeted professional development through the HEART program and the Learning and Performance Division to effectively navigate hybrid instructional models. You'll hear more on that from Missy in a few moments. While national turnover rates in the teaching profession continue to be higher in the southern states, hovering around 17% turnover, our teachers' turnover rate for FY20 was 11%, which is very similar to past years. And our first-year teacher turnover rate for FY20 was just 7%. We have also hired and onboarded 94 classified staff members and still have 24 vacancies. This, in truth, is the area where we are experiencing significant turnover, mainly with our exceptional student education paraprofessionals. While we have worked to retain our ESE paraprofessionals through measures such as additional salary supplements, it's obvious that other means need to be explored. On the flip side, due to the reduced number of students who have opted for face-to-face learning, we currently have an adequate number of bus drivers to run all our routes. Yay! Teacher evaluation is an interesting topic this year. As you may know, the Georgia Department of Education suspended both teacher and leader evaluations last year due to COVID. As of now, the state's expectations for teacher evaluation for FY21 are hanging in the balance. However, you can rest assured that regardless of what the state lays out as a minimum expectation for teacher and leader evaluation, Henry County will continue the rigorous practice of performance management through clear communication and evaluation of performance expectations for every job family. Recruiting and staffing are more challenging now than ever, so creative initiatives are always in the works. This year, we are piloting a unique staffing model with Clayton State University called Intern to Teacher. That should say intern to teacher, not teacher to intern. Through the Intern to Teacher program, student teachers transition into highly effective teachers under the guidance of a master teacher. This year, we hired 2 interns who are working alongside a master teacher who, in turn, provides the interns with in-depth, targeted, one-on-one instructional knowledge and teaching strategies to ensure student engagement and mastery. The student teachers are actually paid a small salary, which is really super exciting for them because what college senior wouldn't want a little cash flow at this point in their college career? We also work with Mercer University to get interested employees enrolled in teacher prep programs. Mercer offers them a 25% tuition discount, and we offer the convenience of payroll deduction. These are typically parapros seeking to become teachers. Our partnership with Griffin RESA is very strong. We rely on them to train our Georgia TAP teachers who are typically career changers seeking teaching certification. We recruited 18 paraprofessionals from our staff to become teachers. And our long-standing arrangement with Clayton State University sees Stockbridge High serving as a professional development school or a lab school to work with those CSU education majors. While many districts are not accepting student teachers at this time because of the challenges of remote teaching and learning, Henry County Schools has continued to welcome student teachers and those in their practicums into our schools. We have been working collaboratively with technology to ensure that these college students have access to all county-level instructional platforms to best support our own students while providing them with a positive, supervised, and practical experience for them. And last but not least, our substitute teacher pool remains a critical component of remote and face-to-face learning. We recently surveyed our subs to further ensure we have an adequate pool of professionals that are ready and willing to serve our students when we return to face-to-face learning, both long-term and day-to-day. And additionally, we are growing our sub pool daily by interviewing and training new subs. So, as we discussed at our August 31st special called board meeting, we have been fortunate as a school district to have afforded our employees exceptional and unprecedented flexibility during the time of remote learning and working. At that time, and I mentioned before, we reviewed over 1,400 requests for accommodations. Now, as we execute your approved return to campus plan and transition to the hybrid model of instruction, the significantly complex work of staffing our schools continues. As a district, we have made it a priority to offer on-campus and remote learning choice for our learners and families. Therefore, our principals have been actively creating instructional design models at their schools that reflect the balance between the needs of the learners and any employee work restrictions. HR staff are collaborating with each principal and assistant superintendent to review staff requests for accommodations based on restrictions identified by each employee's healthcare provider. All of this information is then triangulated to determine possible accommodations for staff, all within federal law and guidelines, and recognizing the need for student learning and connectivity. It's important to note that accommodations from school to school and division to division will look different based on the current and future staffing realities at each location. And the effects of quarantining will also influence staffing models, as employees may need to be on quarantine for up to 2 weeks per our COVID-19 reporting and response protocols. So what are the solutions to these inevitable staffing complexities? We have increased the number of permanent subs assigned to each school to better ensure staff are in place to fill in for absences. However, I keep saying, if the protocols associated with mitigating exposure to COVID-19 are followed, the need to quarantine should be held to a minimum. And while we know that we can't guarantee a COVID-free work environment, keeping our Henry County schools, employees, and students healthy is certainly our priority as we welcome them back to our facilities. This concludes my presentation. I turn it back to you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Sue Smith. Mr. Chair, that concludes what we have prepared, but remain available for any discussion.
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Sue Smith. Does any board member have any questions or comments? Mrs. Edwards?
Thank you. Ms. Sue Smith, what is the number of substitutes per school? I heard you say you're increasing them?
Yes, ma'am. So every school typically has one permanent sub, and that's the one that we know is going to come every single day. They're not called in at the last minute, and we've increased it to 2. And a couple of schools have a few more than that as we try to assist them with knowing that they have difficulty getting subs.
Oh, okay. So do you have a percentage of teachers? I know you read the report. Do you have the percentage of returning teachers so far? Do you have that number?
How many are returning? Well, it depends on which way we want to look at it. So everybody is returning. It just depends what their accommodations may look like. We have about 300 accommodations that we've looked at school to school so far.
So you all are going to be working next week, right?
Yeah. Right. So about 300 that we reviewed, a handful that are truly working remotely. Mostly we were able to accommodate for folks to be in the building with elevated precautions. Truth is, we've had about 8 to 10 who have said, I don't want to do it, and we've lost about 10 employees over the course of the past week.
Which is not bad, considering the size of the system. You said something about the shortage of parapros. What's going to happen during the third phase, when we get into the third phase, if you have that number of parapros, the shortage of parapros at this point?
Right.
What's the plan?
Right. Well, we're working diligently still now recruiting them. And we are working with our substitute teacher pool to see if folks would like to come in and work as parapros for the remainder of the year or even short term. But over the past 3 or 4 weeks, 2 staff members dedicated completely to virtual interviewing of substitute applicants and bringing them on board.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, our substitutes don't want to come back either. So that's a challenge that we're trying to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Edwards. Mrs. Cobb.
Thank you. There's so many great things about what you shared in your presentation, but I want to applaud you and your team for the low turnover rate that you shared. That's really amazing, and I know that that's due to the care and concern that your team shows to our employees and the many other things that you all do for them, and I'm just so grateful. And also, I love what you shared about kind of how you think outside the box in recruiting, because I know every county experiences the same shortages that we experience, and we're all competing for these employees. So creative, the things that you all are doing to recruit new employees. And just thank you for all the hard work that you're doing. I know it's difficult right now, but please know I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Ms. Pope.
Yes, thank you. I also just want to express my gratitude to you and your team for always ensuring that our students have the absolute best in front of them. So I'm just really grateful. I know that y'all's work literally never stops, so thank you for that. And I also just want to express to our workforce that there really are no words to encompass the complexity of what we are entering into, and we acknowledge that, but we are so incredibly grateful, and I really believe in the depths of my heart that we have the best team to get this work started. So I just want to express my gratitude to you and to all of our workforce for taking this on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Dr. Nutt?
Real quick, I was excited when I saw that the seniors getting ready to graduate college can come and work for us for a small, I'm sure it's not a lot, but hey, any little bit helps. Do they still have to, I know once upon a time when I was working on my degree many moons ago, we had to quit our job, especially if we were a parapro in the school system. We had to quit our job in order to do our student teaching. Is that still the same, or have we worked out something?
Some colleges are still requiring that, and we're still trying to kind of beat down those walls to say, look, let's work together on it. But the vast majority have said, you know what, this will work. We will let them not quit. We will work around it. They know the shortages we're dealing with.
That's wonderful.
So having somebody quit their job, not have benefits, not have a salary, there's no incentive. So we are working together to work through those things.
That's awesome, especially if you're a single parent. You can't afford to quit your job to do student teaching. So that's awesome. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Dr. Nutt. Thank you, Ms. Sue Smith. Dr. Davis, we can continue with C1E.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'd like to invite Ms. Morse to the podium to present informational item C1E, the teaching and learning update. Ms. Morse.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Madam Superintendent. For the last several months, we've come together to talk about the great work we've done to plan for our remote learning, and I'm thrilled to be able to come today and talk about our plans to be ready to invite students back to campus while also offering really high-quality remote learning. Last month, you'll recognize this slide. I shared our deep preparation, as I mentioned, that we undertook looking at these big rocks of effective instruction and connectivity. And I think it's really important to note that while we are moving into the next phase of teaching and learning for our students, these big rocks have not changed, with one small adjustment. What you can see now is that our focus is on effective instruction shifts from effective remote instruction to effective hybrid instruction. So we're going to use this term hybrid a lot today, and hybrid is simply just that way that we're describing the fact that as a result of our families having a choice to stay in remote learning or move to on-campus learning, that now we're going to have instruction that has to account for that combination of both of those two pieces, and we're calling that hybrid. As a profession, it really is our obligation to meet the needs of our students and families. And so like all of my colleagues have shared with you here today, I'm ready to share with you now how we're rising to the occasion to make sure that that's so when it comes to teaching and learning. Our task is to continue highly effective instructional strategies that are going to lead to high outcomes for students, regardless of whether they stay remote or are back in the building. And our commitment to connectivity also does not change, because really it is the glue that allows all the rest of this to happen when we have those strong relationships between students and the teachers. And all of that stays the same regardless of the modality of teaching. So how are we going to prepare for this, and how are we going to ensure that that learning can continue? So I would say that the very best way, and the way that we did start this process, was by asking teachers. Teacher voice has been truly essential through every part of our COVID-19 response. And letting our teachers help guide us in this moment is particularly important, because we have provided families with an opportunity to learn both remotely or on campus. And it's going to be our teachers who have to master the complexity of this. And we had to hear their ideas. We had to know what they were thinking to help us solve and provide good options for this moment of hybrid learning. And so their voices were really critical. Beyond that, there's really power in listening to the voices of our teachers. And not only do they possess the most creative of ideas when we're looking at problem solving, asking them to participate meaningfully can also really change their level of job satisfaction, help them achieve their goals, and really allow them to believe that they make a difference in their profession. You can see here on the screen international research that's been conducted with thousands of teachers over the last decade that looked at what makes for effective teachers. You can see that a teacher is exponentially more likely to feel like they can make a difference, to meet their goals, and to be excited about being at work if they're given that opportunity to use their voice to drive the work of their school building. It's pretty impressive. So as a district, we really took this data very seriously, and we conducted over 30 different advisory focus groups. We called them solution sessions so that participants would know that while they were free to express whatever concerns they might have, they were there to provide solutions to the next phase of this work on how to instruct in this hybrid environment, and really to provide us the feedback we needed to be able to give them the tools that were necessary for them to feel confident to be successful. These sessions were specific to certain grade bands, so elementary, middle, high, as well as specific subject areas, because we knew that the needs perhaps of an elementary science classroom might feel and look different in a hybrid environment than a high school CTAE classroom. So we wanted to make sure we were talking to teachers in their field of speciality. We invited about 566 teachers to participate in these groups, and we had about 437 take us up on our offer to participate in these solution sessions. So you can see here that this was the essential question that guided those discussions, as well as a few social media posts that teachers put out there on Twitter that documented their participation in these Google Meets. So immediately from these conversations, we were able to determine that teachers desired additional professional development. Sessions actually in content areas started just this week, and that is an opportunity for us to provide additional training. They will be recorded, and as we've done in the last several months of training, if a teacher can't attend live, we'll have them posted for them to be able to watch later. And then from these discussions, we were also able to provide principles with a list of commonly articulated technology enhancements that teachers wanted or needed to feel confident to do that, to do hybrid teaching. And as a result of that, we provided principals with the cost and the purchasing guidelines in order to do that. And as Brian mentioned, toolkits both for content as well as for hybrid technology support are either in development or have already been developed, and those will be available for teachers as well as for leaders. And I don't want to not mention the fact that our HR team did a really nice job putting together special training just for those brand new educators in our HEART program who have never taught before and are now teaching in this new hybrid environment. So really trying to tailor the support specifically to teachers in the areas in which they need it. And really, at the end of the day, no teacher learned how to teach this way. None of us went to college and learned how to constantly change what our instructional design would look like and how we've managed really since March. And so hearing from our teachers in this next phase was very important. And their solutions and that they provided us in these sessions will really be invaluable as we move forward. At the same time we were talking to teachers, we also cross-divisionally were providing principals with the guidance they needed in order to begin what they needed to do to design the hybrid model for each of their schools. Each school really does have a unique set of circumstances that have to be considered based on the number of students they having opting to stay remote, students coming back on campus, and what their staffing situation is. So as Valerie mentioned, all of that becomes very complex, and so principals were provided with support to be able to ensure that they had a model design that would fit for their circumstance. But at the core of this design really are the two questions that you see up at the screen. These became the test that we had to give to every model as principals designed. Are students learning remotely, being provided with high quality, effective instruction? And are students learning in person, being provided with high quality, effective instruction? The model that's being designed had to be able to feel good and strong at the answers of these questions. So they're at the forefront of every conversation that we're having with principals, as well as teachers are considering what will happen in their classrooms. So in addition to those big questions, what you'll see here are more granular questions that pose to principals as they designed a little bit of a deeper level of consideration. So included here you'll see questions about instructing for all learners who need extra support like gifted or ESE services, considerations for the fact that we're going to have to plan for the fluidity of learners who may have to be on campus and then go back to being remote, depending on any sort of medical or COVID exposure or potential quarantine. Asking principals to be very intentional again about soliciting the voice of their teachers and their students in the design process. The logistics they're considering for their local school playbook, now sitting that next to what does that look like for instruction, any professional learning that they felt that was going to be necessary, as well as ultimately how they needed to be communicating all of this with their families. So really quickly, what you see here on the screen now is really the design of instruction, the three big components that every student's experience in a classroom should include, regardless of whether it's in person or remote. A well-designed instructional plan is going to include whole group instruction, which is usually teacher-directed with student interaction. Small group or one-to-one instruction is where students are typically directing the learning with other students or with the teacher, and then independent work. And independent work is when a student's entirely self-directed after being given really explicit instructions on what that activity should look like. And honestly, COVID or not, these are the components of a well-designed instructional plan for a classroom. We're just talking about them now because we're going to put them in the context of hybrid learning. So with these clearly defined, we gave principals this opportunity to design the instruction for their building. All right, so let's talk first about whole group instruction. So for whole group instruction, and again, this is where the teacher needs to talk to all of his or her students for a full class activity or a classroom discussion. The teacher can set up the classroom so that students can see the teacher both if they are in the classroom as well as if they are on the screen. And this little rudimentary diagram that you can see gives you an idea of how you might set up the classroom in order to make sure that that's possible. So let's play for a minute that you are my in-class students, you're my in-person learners, and here on my screen are my remote learners. So what I can do is teach to you in the classroom while also making eye contact with the students who are on the screen, making sure that I'm talking to you, answering your questions, but also making sure that I'm looking at, connecting with, making eye contact with the kids who are on my screen. When I was at Walnut Creek recently, I saw, again, creative teacher solutions. She had assigned one of the 5th grade students to be the chat monitor. So as she was teaching, when a student would pop a question into the online chat, the student would say, Mrs. Smith, so-and-so has a question, you need to make sure you answer it, to act as that guide to go back and answer that online student's question. Again, really creative solutions that teachers are coming with, so that if they're busy teaching here, they don't miss the fact that somebody has a question on the screen. So again, let's also pretend as my students that I got a whiteboard behind me. And it could be that I position my camera just right so that as I work a math problem, and hopefully no one would ever ask me to work a math problem, but as I'm working a math problem, you all can see me, but so can the students on the screen because I've pointed my camera at that whiteboard. Or, even better potentially, is that I have an online whiteboard tool that Brian's team's taught me about, and I'm using that online whiteboard tool so the students at home can see it, but I'm projecting it onto the wall behind me so that the students in the classroom can see it as well. Those are the kinds of things we're going to see in this hybrid classroom. I think it's also important to remember that while teacher-to-student interaction is really important, like I just showed, so is student-to-student interaction. If you look at that bottom left-hand picture there at Hampton, what you'll see is students in that classroom also have their laptops up, because what they're doing is interacting with their peers who are also at home learning in remote. We don't want the students at home not to be interacting with their classmates who are in the classroom. So very often in whole group, you may see a teacher with their laptop open and students with theirs open so that the students can continue to talk to each other as well as talk through the teacher. The rest of these pictures that you can see up here, the two on either end, are examples of hybrid environments where the teacher is talking to the students remotely and in the classroom. The other two in the middle are examples where right now it's just remote learning. But I think you can imagine what it could look like then if you just had students in those desks and even better, kiddos doing jumping jacks with the teacher there in the gym. So that's whole group instruction. I think as well, when April shares with us here in a minute, that there are also models that have been designed and shared with principals to talk about what co-teaching can look like in this environment, and she's going to share more about that when she presents. So then for the rest of the time, instruction should be happening, again, in small groups or in one-on-one with a teacher or independent work. And some of these images here are examples of different types of small group or one-on-one work that could be happening. So a teacher may decide to have a combination of students remotely and in the classroom being in a group that they can then facilitate, or it could be that they have their remote learners in a group and their on-campus students in a group, and the teacher just can naturally flow between those groups depending on who it is that he or she needs to be connecting to at that point. You may also find situations where a teacher has assigned independent work or group work, while she then is having one-on-one consultation with a student either in the classroom or potentially through Google Meets as well. So maintaining classroom lessons and assignments in Google Classroom is really going to help a teacher to make sure that everything's in one place so that if a student does have to transition from on-campus back to remote or vice versa, that they have the ability to keep all of their activities the same and participate with other students in activities through that Google Classroom. And of course, teachers are going to continue to provide independent work. That's the other third of good instructional design, so that students are able to have that moment where they are doing the work. And I think what that will do when we're intentional about it is continue for us to be very smart about how much screen time our students are having if they're staying remote by smartly placing where that independent work time falls during the school day. So I say all of this, but really want to recognize this is going to be complex. And engaging students deeply in learning, honestly, is really always complex. And then when you layer on top of that this hybrid environment, it increases it. But when we're really intentional about engaging students and when we do smart planning, I know we will rise to the occasion. The modeled hybrid lessons that Brian shared in the instructional technology videos have put together, they're just phenomenal to give teachers an idea of what that can look like. And so that team, our content teams, our school-based leadership teams, they're really doing amazing work to provide teachers with the support they need so that they can be successful in hybrid learning. And honestly, I've seen our teachers do what they didn't think was possible, every time we've made a shift since March. And I know, just like everything else we've done in this pandemic, it's going to take refinement. There will be trial and error. We're going to have to get comfortable with this new way of teaching and learning. But I have full faith in our leaders and our teachers, in our students, in our families, that we are going to be successful. Our parent partners have simply been remarkable during this entire time. And as we transition into this next phase, we ask them to be patient with us. And we know that as we add on-campus learners, our communication with them and our partnership with them is just going to be even more critical than it was before. April's going to share in a minute some of the opportunities we're providing for our families so that they can feel equipped to be able to support their learner during this time of hybrid learning as well. So with these tools, principals, in concert with teams of teachers in their buildings, are designing their models. While the examples I just shared with you really are a starting place of solid models for instruction, if they look at their student selection and their staffing and they determine that they really can't do or need to do something different to tailor to the unique needs of their building, principals were given an opportunity to design and adapt an alternate model of instructional design for their schools. So brainstorming sessions were offered for principals so that they could have thought partnership with each other as well as with people from the district team. And then Kirk's team is going to review every one of these plans that principals have designed and are designing to ensure those two questions are met, that there's high quality and effective instruction for both our remote learners as well as our on-campus learners. This is just an example of a very basic design worksheet that was provided to principals, keeping those questions in mind, close at hand. And again, the work that our principals do to design these models will get incorporated into the local school playbook. So I'll end today simply by repeating that our big rocks of effective instruction and connectivity really have not changed. We are going to be clear that we're providing this much needed flexibility for our students, and that if they believe the right choice for their student is on campus or to remain remote, we're going to provide a high quality instructional experience. I really think that our focus and the instructional design around this is paramount. And it's complex and it's new to every member of our community. And I'm confident, though, that we together are going to be able to continue to provide high-quality instruction and learning for our students, regardless of the modality of that learning. So, Madam Superintendent, that concludes what I've prepared. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, that concludes what we have prepared, but remain available for discussion.
Thank you, Mrs. Morris. Ms. Cobb, you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, what you're doing to support teachers, because really, just for me personally, the biggest concern I had with transitioning, our students back onto campus was for our teachers, and just the stress and the complexity, as you said, of that learning model. And so it's so great to hear how you're supporting teachers. You involve them in the process of getting this set up. You included their voice and continuing to support them, and just the toolkit that you mentioned that will be provided to them. That just makes me so grateful to hear, because I've never been a teacher myself, but I understand that the hybrid model can be very challenging. So thank you for what you're doing to help support them during this time.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Mrs. Edwards.
Thank you so much. Ms. Morris, I just want to mention for us to be cautious regarding the student that is monitoring the chat box to make sure that student does not miss out on instructions, okay? And the other one is, the other concern that I have is, well, I just want to ask a question. Comparing remote classroom to face-to-face in terms of time, because I know we've always been concerned about screen time for the students. So now the teacher in the classroom is going to be teaching both sets of children. So how does that work with the screen time for those children, especially the elementary level children? Because face-to-face can be all day, sure, but remote, I'm sure, cannot be all day.
So I think that's where these locally designed plans by the school become so critical. And if you think about those three components, when you intentionally plan for the independent learning, or even potentially some of the group learning or the small group learning that will happen with students. Some of that can happen asynchronously without the computer needing to be on. And so while a student may have to be checking in over the course of the day in a way that is different as it has been from a full remote experience, the teachers and the principals, that plan they're putting together is going to be really critical to make sure that a student is not just staring at the screen all day, and that independent time where the student needs to be working with that computer shut is built into the plan.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Other questions or comments? Ms. Pope?
Yes, I just want to thank you again. I am really, really grateful that these questions to consider include how the teachers and the students' voices were involved in designing the plan, because we have been or you all have been so intentional as to not just do something to our employees, but to really bring them along. And I'm really grateful that that will continue as we move into this next phase. And I also just want to acknowledge that as if a principal's job was not already incredibly complex, this is amazing. What they're able to do to ensure that these plans work for their communities and their schools is truly just amazing. So I'm really, really grateful for our building leaders and our teachers, and that their voices are being heard. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pope. Thank you, Mrs. Morse. Well, Dr. Davis, we can move to C1F.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'd like to invite Dr. Madden to the podium to present informational item C1F, our exceptional student education update.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Madam Superintendent, August 17th, 2020, Henry County Schools, its teachers and students were reunited to begin their learning journey for the 2021 school year in a remote learning environment. The hashtags, the Twitter messages, Facebook comments, and phone conversations were a testament to how much our students and teachers missed interacting with one another. Learning started that day in Henry County Schools remotely. Now it's time for some students to transition to a hybrid instructional model. It is important to make certain that we are continuing to provide high-quality learning experiences for our students. Effective instruction is at the core of our existence and will always remain a big rock for the ESE department. But as we know, our efforts would be extremely challenging and sometimes negated if we did not include our second big rock, which is connectivity. I would like to continue the conversation from Missy around teacher and staff voices. It is powerful. The Family and Student Support Services Division extended the work of learning and performance and conducted 11 additional focus groups to garner additional input from 16 job families to support the planning and transition to the district's hybrid instructional learning model. We spoke with several groups of teachers to include our special needs pre-K teachers, K-2 transition teachers, emotional behavior disorder teachers, intellectually disabled teachers, orthopedically impaired teachers, our GNETs teachers, deaf and hard of hearing teachers, our visually impaired teachers, and also our related service providers, which includes our SLP speech teachers, OTs, PTs, ESE nurses, and our interpreters. Not only that, we also spoke with our student support facilitators, our ESE parent mentors, our counselors, our graduation coaches, psychologists, and social workers. So you get my drift. Focus groups had the opportunity to work collaboratively with district leaders to identify and problem solve in order to prepare for a smooth transition to a hybrid learning environment. The data gathered has provided our district with what additional support and tools our schools need and our teachers and service providers will need as we prepare to welcome our students back to school. Back to the classrooms, not school. Throughout our focus groups, there were there was excitement to welcome on students and families back into our buildings while expanding the ability to collaborate with their colleagues. In addition to the preparation that was offered through the district summer PD sessions and the ESC Summer Summit sessions, the SE team has prepared many sessions and guidance based on these conversations to provide additional support to meet the needs of staff in preparation for in-person instruction. They've also purchased additional protective equipment for teachers who have to have more direct contact with the needs of students, such as changing and feeding. Now, if any teachers know, our ESE teachers are aware that all students can learn. However, they learn differently in ways that are unique to those individual students. Their voices led us to propose last month for your voice in support of students in self-contained program classes returning to school, which are all the MID, MOID, our SID-PID, K-2 transition, pre-K special needs, our elementary EBD self-contained only, GNETs, and autism adaptive students, grades pre-K through 12, whose family chose to return to school face-to-face. They will have a full week during that orientation period in phase 2. So we're very excited about that because we know they need additional time to become orientated and acclimated to school again. So we thank you for providing that, and our families and teachers, I'm pretty sure, will be excited about that extra time together as well. All interrelated deaf and hard of hearing, OI, and autism general curriculum teachers will follow the alpha and grade level guidance that's set forth in our district's return to school plan. Now, let's take a look at our big rocks again. The next few slides will paint a picture of what ESE instruction will look like for our teachers and our students. I will also share how we're extending our connectivity for our families. As we return to school, students will receive whole group instruction, small group one-to-one, and independent instruction. But let's talk a little deeper. In our co-taught and collaborative classrooms, the general ed teacher will work with the co-teacher in the classroom for special ed, and they will use technology and classroom tools to engage students while implementing various co-teaching models. Students in person learning will participate in instruction through a blended approach by using their classroom tools and technology. The general ed teacher and the ESE teacher will incorporate co-teaching models such as station teaching and alternative teaching during this instructional time. Based on how many students are in each setting, learning will be personalized to meet the needs of those individual students. Small groups of students will be able to complete a task and activity with the support of their collaborative teacher or with their general education teacher. So they will be working simultaneously to make sure that the students' needs are met. The same model will take place for whole group and small group lessons in program area classes, except instead of a teacher, there will be a paraprofessional to support the ESE teacher with learning in the classroom and reinforcing those whole group lessons of instruction for those students to make sure that they are able to follow along and have that additional support for learning in the classrooms. We understand that this may be complex and challenging for our teachers. However, the role of the ESE department is to lead, to support, and to serve. So they're not in this alone. Our ESE team of specialists and coaches are standing ready to support our classroom teachers as they transition in the hybrid model. They will be there for them and provide that live one-to-one support virtually, or they will come and work with them in the building. So they are not alone. Model lessons, collaborative planning, and virtual office hours will be there for them. Now, I've shared a little bit about what the teacher's day looks like. Here's a visual of small group one-to-one instruction in a self-contained program and small group learning for a student. So Ryan will arrive at school. Ryan will begin his daily routines and procedures. That's always something our students do because we want to make sure that they're starting the day focused and ready to learn. Next, they'll start their morning meeting where they work on their calendar activities and the current events. Then Ryan will transition to an ELA instruction with his teacher, and they may have breakout groups where they work with a parapro during that particular time. Ryan will then work on his life skills because that's important for all of our adapted classrooms. Those students work on the life skills, and that includes our social skills, our communication skills, as well as our self-help skills. And guess what? Ryan has to eat, so Ryan will take time to have his lunch. And then attend his academic course he'll pick up in math instruction with the teacher, and then they'll have breakouts for small group instruction and be able to work with his independent goals and work on those particular skills as a reinforcement from the whole group instruction. Then Ryan goes to specials with his general ed peers, and then participates in science and social studies, and he's had a full day. But the day does not end without him self-reflecting and working on his parental communication log at the end of the day. So now you have two pictures. You have what a teacher's classroom looks like when they're working in a co-teaching model with a general ed curriculum teacher providing that support, and that is a great advantage to have those two teachers in the classroom working to make sure that learning takes place for those students and their goals and accommodations are being met in that classroom. So that's very important, and those things are always emphasized for the teachers. Now, it doesn't stop there. We also want to make sure that we're connecting with our ESE and parents for support. As you may recall, the Exceptional Student Education Department developed resources for our parents of students with disabilities called the Mini Help Sessions. Videos on instructional supports and strategies such as how to ensure your child receives his or her IEP accommodations. Social emotional learning and behavior supports were also available, such as showing the parents how do you set up a calm down room or a space at home and how to implement a visual schedule. However, there's nothing better than on-demand support. The ESE department is continuing its remote learning support to parents. There are two options of support to choose from to best meet their needs. They can log in through a Google Meet or they can call. So those options are available, and when they do that, they'll be able to speak with a professional learning specialist, behavior intervention coach, or other staff to provide real-time support. And sometimes when you call in, there is a group, but for anyone who's needing that additional one-to-one support, they will be given a separate link so that they can be provided with that individualized support to address their child's particular need that may be outside of the group. Now, I know you heard me mention last time, but we talked about our parent mentors. That is such a valuable resource. They are on call Monday through Friday to assist parents and families of students with disabilities. They will serve as our parent and family liaisons between the families and the schools to provide resources to assist the family, staff, and the students. They will contact our parents of students participating in remote learning instruction as well to provide support as needed and making sure that those students are staying engaged. They will attend the remote meetings with the parents, having topics such as IEPs, eligibility. They'll participate in the conferences to provide that extra support to parents to make sure that they get what they need and that they feel that they're not alone. They will facilitate bi-weekly parent workshops and parent support meetings, as well as provide parents with IEP tools, planning documents, and resources to foster productive meetings. So that support is right here in Henry County Schools. There is no need to look anywhere else because that option is available. We've done everything we can to make sure that the parents know there are recordings, but I know there was concern about always having to watch recordings, so we wanted to make sure that they can get in touch with someone and a voice and a face that's familiar to them. Now, ESE teachers and staff will be ready to develop high-quality instruction to our students, as well as making sure that they are remaining connected. That is our commitment from day one, and it will continue to be our commitment through the remainder of this year. Thank you, Madam Superintendent. That concludes my presentation. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Madden. Mr. Chair, that concludes what we have prepared, but remain available for any discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Madden. Ms. Cobb, you got a question or comment?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for your dedication to our exceptional students and the teachers that teach them. And I'm so excited that we are going to bring them back for a full week, that first week during orientation. But the parent mentors that you have in place sounds wonderful, and it sounds like just the connectivity that you've really pursued, I can imagine is just appreciated greatly by the parents of those students. So thank you so much for all of that. I know there was a lot of concern in the community about how our special students were going to navigate the remote learning experience. But it sounds like your team has really gone above and beyond to reach those students and parents. So thank you for what you're doing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cobbs. Sorry. Ms. Pope?
Yes, thank you. This is so wonderful. I know that these last several months have been especially trying for these families, and the way that y'all have gone above and beyond to reach them and truly connect to them is just wonderful. So thank you. I am really blown away by how accessible you all have made yourself to these families, and I love that they can contact you through Google Meets. I love the mentor model. I think that this is just really great and speaks volumes to your department and the work that's gone into this. So I'm really, really thankful.
Thank you, Mrs. Pope. Mrs. Edwards?
This question is for Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis, Wednesdays, all other teachers except for ESC teachers will be actually doing remote learning. Am I correct?
Phase 2 for Henry County Schools is a 1-week period. It's Monday through Friday, and the only students that will be in attendance Monday through Friday of that 1 week are our students served in self-contained program areas. So just that 1 week, that Wednesday only, will be a unique day on campus for students served in self-contained program areas. But that will not continue longer than a week, except for our high school self-contained programs.
Yeah, I understand, because if I look back at the model, phase 3 starts the week after the initial phase 2 ends, right? Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because there was just a question that I had. Someone asked me about the what were the other teachers going to, and as much information has been given or provided. Someone asked me about the Wednesday. Why are the ESC teachers working face-to-face and everyone else is doing that week is working remotely on Wednesday? So I just wanted to clarify that.
And this is really actually a reflection of a lot of professionals contributing to the need for students served in self-contained programs to reestablish some consistency and experiences that are routine and well connected, and splitting the schedule actually seemed to be a disadvantage to pursuing that model. And so I'm optimistic that this is actually a better scenario for our professionals, our support services team, and our students together as we transition back to on-campus.
Thank you, Mrs. Edwards. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Dr. Madden. Dr. Davis, we can now proceed with C1G.
That's right. I'm going to actually ask Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Madden, if you could stay at the podium to present informational item C1G. And this is a family and student support update. Dr. Madden.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Madam Superintendent, let's talk a little bit about the family and student services connectivity across the district. We have not wavered in our actions to provide systemic supports to ensure mental, physical, social, and emotional wellness and connecting to a caring adult and having it remain a driving force in Henry County schools. There is so much going on daily to address the needs of our students and staff that I'm aware that I cannot capture it all in this one presentation. Some great work is really happening out there. I will share a few examples of the work that is taking place to share why I am confident that we're constantly building upon the structures and frameworks to build a culture of confidence and care. Social and emotional learning is taking place for our adults and our students. We have adult SEL toolbox. We have 100% of our elementary schools, middle schools, with the social emotional learning curriculum, as well as the majority of our high schools. The teachers and leaders have provided extensive PD in these particular areas so that they can provide that additional layer of support in our classrooms, and it's embedded within their schedules. The SEL specialist, which is our social emotional learning specialist, has facilitated sessions with new teachers, our APs, principals, and even bus drivers on how to infuse SEL into daily practices and school culture. School counselors are working with teachers to facilitate their second step in School Connect lessons, providing information for teachers on how to create positive relationships with students, providing social, emotional lessons for students, providing access to those virtual calming rooms, supporting their emotional health by communicating with families, and providing additional support. Our school counselors are also facilitating virtual check-ins as well as check-ins in their buildings, making sure that those students have those meetings with them, as well as wellness activities such as Wellness Wednesday, and assessing the needs by utilizing teacher referrals, facilitating those SEL lessons, college access opportunities. We have not forgotten about that. Assessing for suicidal ideation with our students, and providing community resources, completing DFACS referrals, providing cultural responsive sessions, collaborating with social workers to provide additional resources. College advisement is taking place, and they're providing additional financial aid and post-secondary informational support. Trauma-informed practices are cascading throughout our district. Our social workers and our psychologists have been working to make sure that our staff and students and employees are aware of trauma-informed practices, because a lot of our students have experienced some trauma during these times. The district care team, I mentioned that in our last presentation, is up and running in all schools. The district team is leading and supporting the expansion of this work at every school that's focused on cultural responsiveness, social, emotional well-being of our students, and like I said before, connecting to a caring adult. There are SEL calendars that have been established for each school to follow each student and adult. These activities and topics have been put in place for preventative measures. We don't want to be reactive. We want to make sure we put things in place to make sure that we're preventing those hardships and those times for our students and adults as well. However, a framework has been developed to make certain students' attendance, their behavior, and emotional welfare are being monitored. So let's just say this. If a student is having difficulty, they're identified by one of the caring adults in their building. Once they're identified, that caring adult then works with that student to make sure that he or she is receiving an additional layer, and they're intensifying that support to make sure that that student knows, hey, you're not alone. We're here, and we're here to support you, and we're available to listen to you, and making sure that that family receives resources as well for that student. Our students must know that they are not alone. We care in Henry County Schools, and we must make certain that our students and our families know this. Caring is just who we are. Now, our social workers are a constant in Henry County Schools. They are passionate about making sure our students and families receive the resources that will help them to be successful in school by identifying and linking families to vital community resources, from student sessions to home visits. Yes, they are making home visits. They are connecting to ensure that their well-being of our students remain a priority. Meaningful community partnerships such as food access with Operation Lunchbox. They're doing eviction prevention, Connecting Henry and Raise Me Up Foundation. Mental health providers are working with our students. One organization, McIntosh Trail. We have Family Ties and others, as well as dropout prevention through community in schools. So they're working extremely hard. We know that family engagement in schools improves student achievement. We've talked about that so many times. We are continuing to improve in Henry County Schools thanks to our partnership with our families. Have you ever heard the saying, you're never too old to learn? Many families are seeking opportunities to sharpen their skills to serve as their child's first teacher. Hey, I must admit, I'm one of those. My child is taking physics. I don't know anything about physics. So thank God he's doing well, but that support is there if needed. As you know, we rolled out the Remote Learning Resource Library last month. Board, you did not want us to stop there. I remember you said, are these videos too cumbersome for our families to keep watching? So we took that, and our Henry County Schools Family Remote Learning Summit, where cross-divisional teams are gearing up to provide various live sessions, I said live, on topics and areas where parents have expressed a need. They will be live, but we will also have recordings for those families that may not be able to attend at those times that we have. The sessions are scheduled to take place the week of October 5th 2 topics will be presented daily, one at 10 a.m. and one at 6 o'clock p.m. for families to connect and engage with Henry County Schools staff. There will be a daily theme for the topics presented. The topics range from understanding access for ELL, our English language learners, the 3-2-1 liftoff, lunch and learning with digital resources, parent and family engagement at every grade level, and many more sessions to our families. Lastly, I know you heard me mention the Henry County Learning and Support Center a while back. It seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't really. However, we want you to know that we have not hit the snooze button during this challenging moment in time. We are developing those arms of service as promised. Family and student services have moved in and are serving families and students by appointment for those who cannot be served virtually. The Adult Education and Extended Learning Team has secured partnerships with Southern Crescent Technical College and Connecting Henry to assist in advancing the skills of our classified employees and adults in the Henry County school community, as well as working with our students. It is our hope that through these collaborative efforts, we will be able to bridge the gap that exists between student success and family empowerment. I'm so excited about that. So, our big rocks again, as we mentioned, effective instruction is our priority, but it cannot happen without those relationships. There's no way. You have to have those relationships with caring adults and students. We care about learning and we care about our students. These rocks are our why. Madam Superintendent, I turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Madden. Mr. Chair, that concludes what we have prepared, but I remain available for any discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Madden. Is there any questions or comments from any board member? Got off easy. Good job, Dr. Madden.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Davis, we can now proceed to C1H.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'd like to invite Mr. Strum to the podium to present informational item C1H, our school readiness and athletics update.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, board members, and Superintendent Davis. I am pleased to share our back-to-school readiness and athletics update as we prepare for our gradual and staggered return. This afternoon, you heard from our divisions and the incredible and complex work that's gone into ensuring we're prepared for this moment. And all of this work is united around our core commitments and our district big rocks. And the work that's been shared this afternoon, from staffing to facility adaptations to family and student supports, all contributes to our ability to meet our core commitments and big rocks and provide an exceptional experience for every student. You heard Dr. Madden mention, and before I continue into my report, I just want to take a minute to give an update on our school-based care teams. By this point in time, not only have all of our school-based care teams met on multiple occasions, but also our district care team has been activated, created, and met. And I just want to point out a couple of things on here. Of course, Dr. Madden shared some of the specific items that the care teams have done, but you'll notice on here that since remote learning began, a total of 2,815, and that number has grown since preparing for this report, care teams have connected with 2,815 families. Just an amazing statistic, and again, that shows the importance of this connectivity. This vital work transcends beyond the remote setting, and the effort and outreach of the school-level care team will continue as we begin our hybrid model and will serve as a bridge of connectivity to all learners and all of our staff. As I've shared before, everything rises with our leadership. You've seen me talk to this quote before, and just the impact of the care teams and the remote learning start is testament to the importance and the role of our leaders. In this report, I'm going to detail some additional actions our principals have and are taking to prepare for our phased in-person return and the support that is being provided to guide them through this unprecedented and complex time. And when you think about the task of opening schools remotely and then returning students to campus, our principals are continually redefining our systems and processes. It's almost like building a puzzle, taking it apart, putting it together again, so on and so forth. And when it comes to our student return, it takes the principal with the support and guidance of all of the work of the divisions you've heard this afternoon to put it all together. It's the role of the district to build the systems and processes and essentially create the conditions for schools to be successful. And then it's the role of the principal to adapt and implement them into their settings based on their unique circumstances. You're familiar with the District Back to School Playbook. Dr. Davis shared this in her opening. That's located on our website and details our district systems and processes. Again, our district creating the conditions for our schools to be successful. And from this and the other supports that you heard this afternoon, our schools then adapt this to fit their unique circumstances and settings. To guide our principals as they put the pieces together, we developed what we now call the local school playbook. This playbook is essentially the instructional and operational guide for the school. You can almost think of it as a workbook. And it's within this local school playbook where school teams develop their practices adapted from the district supports. As an example of how the local school playbook works, you heard Josh talk about the many facility adaptations that have occurred in schools, from the placing of the dots to the hand sanitizer stations and all of those different things. And so from that, the schools then take this and adapt it to their local school settings. So how are students going to move in our hallways? Where are we going to sit at lunch? How are we going to do spacing? All of those sorts of things become how the school then adapts what we've created at the district level to fit their individual circumstances. And many other examples that were shared this afternoon from the staffing and instruction, how those pieces come together in the hybrid instructional model. You saw Missy share a template for how the schools create what their instructional design will be based on those things. And again, that all is part of their local school playbook, which is an internal document for them, but it's from that that they plan their staff training and that they plan their parent and staff communications that I'll talk about here in just a couple of minutes. And while this work is very complex, I want to emphasize that principals are not alone in this process. Board, your plan of action is designed to balance consistency of practice throughout the district with local school pride. And your investment in our district's infrastructure directly contributes to our ability to support and guide principals. And so throughout the presentations, as you've heard this afternoon, multiple opportunities were created to allow divisions to engage with principals as thought partners and develop their plans. And additionally, there have been work sessions for principals to share strategies and ideas guided by the Leadership Services team. And our staff has been in constant presence of guiding the principals in person. And every time a principal has contact with a member of our team or a member of the district team, it's an opportunity to be solution-focused and for us to listen to and understand the perspective of our principal and then adapt our practices accordingly. And while support and guidance has been provided throughout this time, the principal, again, is the key designer, along with their team, that puts the final pieces together for their school. Communicating with and preparing the staff is also an essential part of being prepared for the student return and being able to implement the new hybrid instructional models and school processes we have heard this afternoon. So to accomplish this, our principals have held faculty meetings, conducted simulations, practiced processes and instructional models with their staff, utilized collaborative teams within the school to ensure that their staff were involved and understood the process. And the work to prepare our staff, as you've heard, is also a key priority of every division and department. And you've heard of office hours and additional professional development toolkits from instruction to technology. And all of these are put together, and we expect our leaders and staff to take an active learner's role in engaging in these opportunities. But just practicing a plan and developing it doesn't ensure success. You almost have to take it for a test drive. You have to practice it. You have to see what works, what barriers do we identify, and what might we need to change. And so many of our schools engaged in what we now call the day in the life of simulation. So basically they took their plans and took them for a test drive. And you'll see a great example here of where at Wesley Lakes Elementary, their staff actually simulated being students, walking to the school to enter classes and see what the day would feel like. And by doing this with a staff, It deepens everyone's understanding and serves to ensure consistency of practice throughout the building. And as a dual purpose, they also shared this on YouTube with their parents so they could see, hey, this is what students are going to experience when they come to school, similar to our video that we opened the board meeting with. Another example was the admin team at Dutchtown Elementary School, who along with their leadership services staff, again, walked through the day in the life of students returning to campus. They literally replicated the moment the student got out of the car or off the bus, walked down the hall, went to class, went to lunch, went to specials, had instruction, and examined every aspect of the day, asking those critical questions to address if their plan would work and what improvements were identified. And these examples, I want to add, are being played out in schools throughout our district. And through these experiences, principals refined their plans, and as a district, we also provided additional care financial funds to each school and detailed additional resources they may choose that support their local school playbook. And perhaps most importantly, principals have to communicate with their students and parents. Communication has been a constant, ongoing expectation as principals prepared for remote learning and now the gradual and staggered return of students. Communication has never been more important. Principals have utilized traditional methods such as emails and newsletters and new technology for some of us, including YouTube, Twitter, and other means to get their message out. These efforts are aimed at both preparing parents and students for what the school day will look like as we work together to keep Henry healthy. And as I shared earlier, and Dr. Davis shared, this board meeting began with one of those such efforts with the Day in the Life of video that will be shared with our community. So I'd like to now show just a quick specific example of one of our principals, Tony Townsend from Locust Grove High School, as he took the district playbook and the language of our board-approved plan and then shared that with his community in his own voice.
Hello, Locust Grove community. I'm so excited to officially announce that our district has set dates for the return to school phase-in process. I know that I can speak for the faculty and staff by saying that we are looking forward to welcoming the students of Locust Grove High School back to the building in just a few short weeks. As we get closer to that return date, I'll be sending several informational videos highlighting some of the more important information and processes regarding our return to school protocols. In this video, we will cover the different phases of reentry, the schedule of our hybrid structure, and a few things that you will need to do prior to that date.
So this is just one of many
Locust Grove community.
This is just one of many examples throughout our district where, again, our principals are taking the practices and policies and adaptations that we've created as a district, modifying them and adapting them to their unique settings, and then communicating the voice and the words of the board and our superintendent in their own words to their community to deepen understanding. And again, as I think Dr. Davis has shared before, we know principals and teachers are some of the most trusted people in their community. So being able to hear from the voice of your principal in whatever fashion your community is used to is so essential to a successful return of school. And because of the work of our divisions and the intentional planning and practicing, I'm confident we have prepared for an exceptional experience for both our students that select in-person learning as well as those that will continue in the remote environment.
Hello.
Finally, I want to share again last month a quick update on athletics. And since that time, we have had our first football games along with softball, volleyball, and cross-country meets. And I'm pleased to share that our schools were so well prepared for these events with modifications that included limiting capacity, marked seating as applicable, and continual safety announcements throughout all of those events. All of this has contributed to a wonderful and safe atmosphere for our athletes, band members, cheerleaders, and spectators. And additionally, our middle schools have now held their first softball games with other events to follow once students return. So truly, everything rises with leadership, and our principals continue to rise with support and guidance from the district to ensure connectivity and effective instruction for every student, every day, for all learners. Thank you, Dr. Davis. That concludes my report. I remain available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schrum. Mr. Chair, that concludes what we have prepared, but remain available for any discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Schrum. Ms. Cobb, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the support that you and your team are providing our principals, because just as important as it is that our teachers receive support, that's just as important as well that our principals and building administrators receive support. So thank you for what you're doing. And I love what you shared. I think it might have been the past week or so on social media about how you were in a meeting and you had your team start calling principals and just asking, what are we doing that's helpful, and what can we do to further help you? And that was just amazing, that level of just support and just listening to them and the feedback. And you even said, you were adjusting some of the things that you were doing based on the feedback that you received from principals. That's going to be critical to this being successful for them. So I'm sure they're grateful for your support, and just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Mrs. Edwards?
Thank you so much. Just a couple of comments. And Dr. Davis, going back to the care team, I think that was an excellent report that has been given. In fact, all the reports have been excellent. Just like to see the care team continues after COVID, because I think it's been a great support for the community. Also, what percentage, Dr. Davis, have the schools' playbooks been submitted to you? Have all the schools submitted their school playbooks?
Mr. Schrum, why don't you answer that? I know we're looking at the COVID-19 ones this week with the response team, but can you give us an estimate?
Sure, correct. So I would say the answer to that question, so the creation of the playbook from the principals with support from our district team and especially leadership services staff has been ongoing. So it's sort of like a workbook that keeps getting pages added to it and refined. So as the COVID pieces were developed, for example, then principals would take that into their playbooks and adapt it to their school. Who would call who? What's going to happen when this happens? So the checking of it, so to speak, or the feedback process has been ongoing. But all local school playbooks are kind of officially due this week, so that they can get the final level of feedback, and then from that, schools begin to communicate that information, and some already have, as you've seen on the video, out to their families.
Oh, okay. And just congratulations to you, Dr. Davis, for the team's superior work. I just need to say congratulations, because they've done superior work with the COVID. Thank you.
Appreciate you saying that, Mrs. Edwards. Sitting here a little bit in awe of sort of how this could feel very routine in report. And yet, if you think about every professional in education has only done education one way, and it has been completely reinvented, redesigned, rehearsed, and monitored, it really is actually remarkable. And so, I mean, I know as we're getting through each one of these reports, it feels like we're acting as though this is simple. But the 6,000 employees these reports represent are a group of employees who are doing everything it takes to make school accessible for every child in any way the family is most comfortable. And it really is remarkable. So I do appreciate you saying that. Also appreciate the little segue to add my own added just appreciation for the team.
Thank you, Mrs. Edwards. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Schrum. Dr. Davis, we can move to C1I.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'd like to invite Ms. Jessica Stormer and Mr. Gabe Creary to the podium to present informational item C1I. These are the co-chairs of our executive COVID-19 response team and really represent the backbone of completely redesigning how public school systems handle a pandemic and really extend the work of the historical organization. So, Ms. Stormer, I'm going to turn it over to you for your first report up here.
Pressure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Go ahead and turn your mic on. Make sure your mic's on.
Step one. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Madam Superintendent. Our reality now must include the successful navigation of COVID-19 on our daily lives and activities. Our goal has always been to bring our students back face to face, and as such, this Board of Education voted on a staggered and gradual return to school to accomplish this goal in a responsible and purposeful way. The staggered and gradual return that you voted on, Board, has allowed our district to scale up the successful efforts to mitigate and respond to COVID-19 that we have implemented to date. As you heard Superintendent Davis share earlier, we see a downward trend of COVID-19 cases within our county. Yet, we are aware that it continues to impact our entire community, and we understand that as a school district, we will experience COVID-19 positive results as well as exposures to those who test positive. We are prepared to identify and respond in a way that will keep our learning environment safe. As we build on the work that has been accomplished to date to ensure a safe and supportive learning environment in the midst of COVID-19, we wanted to take a moment to share how our Henry team continues to ensure the implementation of consistent and coordinated efforts to both mitigate the incidence of COVID-19 and respond responsibly when concerns are identified within our school system.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members, Superintendent Davis. How are we keeping Henry safe as we return to school? Through clear protocols, coordinated communication, and a system of checks and balances. Extensive research and collaboration has gone into creating a thorough playbook, investigation, and communication protocols and training that Ms. Stormer and I will review after sharing how we did to get our current state of readiness. As we commit to the core belief that all learning environments will be supportive, safe, and secure, as well as the strategic action of advancing connectivity, aligned with GHSA, CDC, and DPH guidance, we have developed a brief history of returning our students and employees to our schools. On June 15th, we returned our student athletes for conditioning. During this process, we used thorough screening protocols to ensure that no symptomatic athletes or coaches exposed others to COVID or non-COVID illnesses. As we moved from conditioning to practices to live events, we responded to exposures and positives in a timely and effective manner that mitigated the chance of spread within our teams. At this time, we have been able to sustain this vital connection to our student athletes, bands, and communities while maintaining a focus on safety. Our largest community event since graduation occurred over the last 2 Friday nights as 7 of our football teams hosted games with limited capacity and responsible distancing guidelines in place. Signage was pervasive. Announcements reinforced responsible distancing practices. Our football players, cheerleaders, and bands were able to take a large step forward with safety at the forefront. The same processes have been occurring on a smaller scale since August with volleyball, cross country, and softball successfully and safely. We have had portions of our faculty and staff in our buildings and all return today, September 14th. Similar to athletics, we have set expectations in place for responsible distancing and how to respond should COVID and non-COVID symptoms arise. Through timely response and communication, we have been able to mitigate the chance of spread within our buildings. Our history is important as we now will begin the scaled return of students back to our facilities on September 28th. Through the process of developing protocols for building leaders and district office support, we are ready to scale up our response. Through the trainings we have done, the trainings we will do, the structure that we have developed to support those on the front lines of response, we are ready to ensure our learning environments will be supportive, safe, and secure as we further increase connectivity. COVID-19 response team and research team. Athletic preparation and response to COVID-19 has been effective so far, as well as the response as a portion and then all of our staff has returned. We have learned from each case and realized that the need for diverse fields of expertise to support dynamic response are necessary. As we scale up to full staff and a portion of our students returning, we have implemented the COVID-19 response team. This team is represented by key members in each department, meets daily to review current case responses, and make sure communication is occurring to ensure safety and transparency under evolving, unprecedented circumstances. The work is not easy, but the strength and the dedication of the team that has been established will ensure safety is at the forefront as we rebuild in-person connections for our students, faculty, staff, and community. Our research team supports the work and decisions being made surrounding COVID-19. Research occurs on CDC and DPH guidelines, model in similar school systems, and are examined for the responses to current COVID-19 challenges and guidance is suggested for implementation. Much of the work of the research team is represented in our COVID-19 playbook.
Mr. Crary just talked to you about our executive COVID-19 response team. Our team is monitoring the actions and supports that are outlined in our district playbook for COVID-19 safe and healthy schools. Inside this playbook, we outline our plan for mitigation, response, communication, building operations, and quarantine impact. Keep Henry Healthy emphasizes the health strategies that our public health officials communicate are key to preventing the spread of COVID-19. Wash up, mask up, and watch your distance. Keep Henry Healthy is promoted throughout our district through the use and availability of soap, sanitizer, cleaning supplies, as you heard our operations team talk about earlier. This Board of Education has required the use of masks, which provide a highly effective barrier to the spread of the virus, putting the safety of our students and our staff above all else. To emphasize and provide confidence in the use of distance, our operations team has placed visible dots on the floors of our schools to indicate responsible distancing. With these coordinated measures in place, we are ready to identify and respond when COVID-19 impacts our school community. We have developed responsible reporting guidelines for our entire team of staff and faculty to ensure that everyone knows how and when to report a COVID-19 concern. We have worked closely with our local and regional Department of Public Health officials to act within the guidance that they have set forth to evaluate and respond to these reports in our schools and offices. Thankfully, and to the credit of our Board of Education, Henry County Schools has an incredible team of licensed nurses on staff who are working as a unit to expeditiously assess and respond to each report of positive COVID-19 or exposure to a positive COVID-19 that impacts our school family. When we identify a positive case of COVID-19 within one of our school facilities, we have a clearly defined and organized communication plan to determine dates of safe return for those who test positive and for those who meet criteria for exposure, also known as close contact. The criteria for close contact is being less than 6 feet away from someone who tests positive for a cumulative 15 minutes over a 24-hour period. We have a clearly articulated protocols for personalized close contact notifications. Each person who is identified as a close contact will receive a personal phone call from one of our administrators or designees who have been trained to notify them of their close contact status. And quickly thereafter, we will send a general notification letter to the entire staff and parents of the organization or the building in which was impacted by COVID-19. Part of stopping the spread of COVID-19 is quarantining when necessary. We know that as our nation and our local school communities unite in the effort to stop the spread of COVID-19, quarantining will be necessary in specific situations. Quarantine timeframes are clearly identified by our Department for Public Health, and our team of licensed nurses are working in close partnership with our school leaders to determine these dates through a prompt and efficient case-by-case assessment. Our confidence in our remote learning capabilities drive a seamless process to ensure that students who are required to quarantine for reasons of prevention continue to have access to the learning environment. Further, our staff and faculty who are quarantined for preventive reasons will continue to work remotely in each case where this remains possible. We work closely with our human resources team to ensure the seamless and supportive operations when preventative quarantining is necessary. We just heard about the framework and activities that our district playbook provides, but we know that to operationalize these actions, our schools must each have a local plan. As was detailed earlier by Mr. Schramm, each school has developed a local school playbook to outline the logistics, actions, and clearly define the roles and responsibilities of each team member to ensure that this plan reaches every staff member and student within our school system. Each school has contributed to the development of their local playbook with the guidance and leadership of our Leadership Services Division. In this local playbook, our school leaders define the who, what, where, and when that is required to effectively mitigate, respond, and communicate for all COVID-19 related concerns. Tools that have been created to support local planning include a COVID-19 checklist, a COVID-19 planning guide, a close contact interview guide, and a flow chart of what and how to report any COVID-19 concern to our district nursing team. Board, as you know, we have the most incredible team of school leaders. They have engaged in this planning with the care and the commitment that it takes to ensure that each school team is prepared and ready as we welcome our students back to face-to-face learning. And of course, successfully engaging in this work doesn't happen without purposeful planning and training. Strong and active partnerships were developed early on with our Department of Public Health since the onset of COVID-19 this spring. Since the spring of 2020, we have created a COVID response team that is made up of our licensed nurse staff, family services, human resources, leadership services team members. Our nursing team meets regularly with our District 4 Public Health Department officials to ensure that we are using the most up-to-date guidance to respond responsibly to each COVID-19 incident.
Early in the process, athletic directors were trained in screening for athletes. Supplies were provided by facilities and maintenance and leadership services to support cleaning and screening processes. Coaches were trained by athletic directors and principals were looped in on the processes. As we kicked off conditioning and practices, leadership services representatives monitored the programs to ensure safety was at the forefront. Support was present 24/7 for ADs that needed to discuss protocols and potential cases. Principals have been provided the playbook and have been given training on proper response and communication to our athletic processes. As employees have returned, they've been able to monitor and practice appropriate response to symptomatic issues that have arisen. We are currently finalizing additional training for principals on Tuesday that will further support understanding of the processes and protocols, so all are ready for the return of students on the 28th. This includes specific Henry County Schools mask requirements guidance developed by the district and will be in effect across all schools. Principals will be trained on the mask guidance expectations. Our building and district leaders will receive a package of employee and student training materials on Tuesday of this week that will be used to cascade the information necessary to mitigate, respond, and communicate effectively and consistently across the district. These materials will ensure that every teacher and every student is prepared to prevent and respond to all COVID-19 concerns. Together, we will keep Henry healthy. Superintendent Davis, this concludes what we have prepared.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Mr. Chair, that concludes what we have prepared, but remain available for any discussion.
Thank you. Does any board member have any questions or comments? Ms. Cobb? Sorry.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you to the response team and all of the hard work that you've put in for months and months now. It's such a big job and so detailed. You have to be so detailed with your response and communication, and I just know it's such a huge job. So I just wanted to personally say thank you, and especially the support that you've provided for our athletic programs. I think that has been a lifeline for so many students and parents during this time when they aren't able to be in school. They're playing sports, and it makes me happy, and I'm really looking forward to going to a sporting event soon myself. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Dr. Nutt?
Well, I just have to tell you, I went to the Locust Grove McDonald football game, and I could not get a Diet Coke. I was devastated. I was starving. And that brings me to my question. I know I wondered why I couldn't get, like, prepackaged food. I understand about cooking the hot dogs and the hamburgers. I get that. But are we going to talk about a Diet Coke? Because some of us fly in there right after work, ready to put on our Warhawk or Wildcat mask. And I will say everybody had a mask on in the stands where I was at. I was really, to be honest, I was very impressed that the kids, and if they didn't have a mask, the kids were telling each other, hey, you better put your mask on. So that I was very impressed that they did that, that the kids were that dedicated and that, and they said, well, you know, we hope it'll get bigger and bigger. And I do too, because I'd love to see people out in the parking lots rooting for our teams. But will we consider the concession stands maybe later on?
So we are in phase one right now. And one thing we've added to phase one are student trainer volunteers, because we found that the safety of the water was important after week one, the football players getting that from the trainers. But we are in phase one, and when we go into phase two, we aim to add prepackaged concessions, including Diet Coke.
Thank you. Thank you. Even though I'm not supposed to be drinking it, you know, it's okay. But yeah, and it just isn't a football game without the smell of popcorn, you know, and sunflower seeds everywhere. So,
Thank you, Dr. Nutt. Ms.
Thank
Pope?
you.
Sorry.
Yes, I just want to thank you both. I know that you both have other responsibilities aside from COVID-19 response, so I am so incredibly grateful for y'all's dedication and your help for us to navigate these times. So thank you to you and the team that you've worked with. It's amazing.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Mrs. Edwards.
Thank you. Could you tell us what has been the average so far attending the games? I know they just started, but what was the average of parents attending?
So I dropped by 3 games in the last weekend or Friday night that I went to games, and we set a 33% capacity limit at the games with a 4-parent per child. I was told that the games we went to were somewhere around 20 to 25% capacity of the 3 games I went to, and I think most of the games were similar. We have representatives at every game, and everyone reported that we were under our 33% capacity, probably in the 20 to 25% range.
Okay. Also, heard Dr. Nutt mention something about the concession stands, so they're not going to be open?
So they are not currently open right now. We are looking to get safely through phase 1, and then once we work this through executive cabinet, we would look to do phase 2, where we would potentially allow prepackaged concessions at that point.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Thank y'all. Dr. Davis, we can now move to C1J.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'd like to invite Dr. Knowlton to the podium to present the last of our series, which is informational item C1J. And this is really just intended to provide a summary of the communications that are available to our public where all of this is housed. And so let me turn it over to Dr. Knowlton.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Madam Superintendent. I have the pleasure of presenting the numerous communications that have been shared with parents, students, employees, and other community stakeholders during this COVID-19 era and during our efforts to share the district's back-to-school plans. The role of the communication team is to transfer all that you've heard from the previous presentations into an effective, clear, and concise message to families, employees, and stakeholders. We currently communicate via district website, social media, with videos and Infinite Campus Messenger. There are 3 main objectives to our strategy to communicate. The first one is that the district's website and each school's website is synchronized with the most current, up-to-date information. The second is the families are well informed as actions and decisions are deployed. And the third objective is staying connected to the various media outlets to keep the greater community informed through our press releases. Effective and ongoing communication is key in keeping our communities engaged and informed. I recently came across a quote that read, "There is nothing in life is more important than the ability to communicate effectively." The website is one of the major communication tools we utilize to keep our stakeholders informed. We use thousands of videos to help populate all graphics and announcements. We have had over 1 million district website visits since March 13th. Allow me to draw your attention to the right of the screen, where you will find a dedicated web page that provided information on COVID-19. This page has nearly 80,000 visits. And there is also a dedicated back-to-school page to inform our students, their families, and community stakeholders on pertinent information as it relates to back-to-school. Thus far, this page has received over 200,000 visits. This slide shows even more information that we have shared via the district's web page. On this web slide, it contains informational headers on all district and school level websites, such as when you actually adopted the school calendar, COVID-19 and back to school information, current headlines, which includes our press releases, and links to the Board of Education meetings where the community is notified of board meetings and can watch live stream footage or watch the recording of board meetings, as well as other important district decisions. You've heard a lot about the Playbook. Allow me to take a brief moment to navigate the district's website. David Birch, our multimedia director, will assist in this navigation. Let's start with the back to school information. Here you will find that our back to school, the timeline, which Superintendent Davis actually discussed during her opening of this meeting. Now, could you please click on the playbook? This is what everyone's been talking about. This is what's worth gold here to us here. So this is where the district is informing families and communications, community stakeholders just how we as a district are keeping Henry safe and healthy as we navigate during this pandemic. The playbook answers the majority of the questions. Now, if you can click on the physical space for me, please. This is where the district describes and displays how we are adapting our schools, our facilities, and processes to keep students and staff safe. Okay. Second page is adaptation strategies. It shows graphics that you will see throughout this document, as well as different topics. Under school, you will find the different adaptation that we're making in order to keep the school safe as well. On classroom, we speak about responsible distancing, assigned seats, and masks. David, could you please check that cleaning protocol? Click on that for the cleaning protocol for me. And this actually shows a detailed cleaning procedures that are asked. A lot of people are asking about what's going to happen when this happens. This is a detailed report of what the cleaning is going to look like through SSC. And a lot of this information, again, has been shared as from the previous and also from Josh when he did his presentation earlier. So if you can go to our large spaces. Again, this is just giving you an overview of the adaptation we're doing as it relates to our large spaces. And then transportation, the enhanced cleaning and modified loading and unloading processes are discussed. Please note that there are no field trips. Wanted to point that out. That's in there as well. And under our school attendance, you would notice under our school attendance that we are actually partnering with our parents. And so they can ensure that the students, before they're checking that, as you saw in the video, are checking temperatures and ensuring that students are not having flu-like symptoms or without a fever prior to them sending their students to school. Also, David, could you now click on this COVID-19 safe and healthy? Now, Jessica and Gabe did a phenomenal job in this section during their presentation. This section shows that the district is partnering with Georgia Department of Public Health. Keep Henry Safe reminds us all the simple of those common things like washing your hands, maintaining social distancing, as well as wearing your mask. Within this document, as we just kind of go through this document, this section, you will also find the district response protocol to positive COVID-19 cases. You will also find the board adopted plan to return on campus learning. Communication, all those guidelines that we're having set up. Then what happens if they're quarantined, also we show examples and very nice graphics as well. Okay. David, you can go down to where on down for a little bit, where we can go down to where the return to on-campus learning. That's where the board adopted plan is also on this page as well. There we go. For any parents that have any questions or anything, all this is right here within this playbook on this back to school page here. Now I also like to navigate to the parent resources. April Madden spoke to what resources are available to assist students and their families. I'm going to go where it was setting up appointments with individuals for face-to-face or videos, just a nice little setup for our families. Great resources for our families there. And the last area I would like to navigate to you is going to be the frequently asked questions. So the district FAQs are forever evolving. And this is where we're taking information and putting it out there. And there's a lot of these, if we can, this is where we're directing a lot of our parents to. Also, we had a meeting this morning with our front office staff. They're also trying to know this is where a lot of these answers are going to be found at. And we continue, again, to update this for our families and our communities so they can keep them well informed on that. And as you can see, the back-to-school information on this website is quite impressive, I would say. This team has done a very good job in making sure that everyone have what they needed. And also it serves as a great resource in keeping all our students, our families, and our community stakeholders well informed. Now I'm going to return back to the PowerPoint presentation so that I can wrap it up from here. Okay. Now, social media plays a vital role in reaching out and sharing information with our families and community stakeholders. We have approximately 9,000 followers on Twitter and 21,000 on Facebook. Let me just say that if you have not had the opportunity to review our Twitter account, you are missing a treat. There is so much inspirational and positive and dedicated gestures on this particular page. So please take a moment if you have not. We've also had several social media campaigns. You have probably seen our most recent campaign, which is where we're actually representing or showcasing, celebrating each of our 52 schools teachers of the year. So that is pretty phenomenal. That's the top of that shows the beginning of that. The most visited post we have so far has over 100,000 views. So it's they're paying attention to that one. So videos have become a popular communication approach to inform families, employees, and community stakeholders. The team has worked hard with hundreds of hours of raw and edited footage. We have over 130 produced and 30 videos produced and shared, averaging nearly 3,000 views. Started 5 new recurring features, which included like our FAQs, our board highlights, our board recaps, the insights, just to name a few of those. And most viewed videos seen by approximately 22,000 viewers. We have nearly 4,000 subscribers to the Henry County Schools channel. Infinite Campus Messenger is a portal designed to keep parents and students informed on attendance, grades, and other pertinent announcements. We have dispersed over 100 messages since March. These messages go out routinely to 37,000 recipients. Times 100 messages, you are looking nearly at 4 million messages being sent just to students and families, not to even include our employees. Students and families, please know that we want to stay in contact with you. Therefore, make sure you sign up for Infinite Campus if you haven't already. The directions are on the website. While each section of this compass slide is equally important and important to the work that we do within our organization, I want to draw your attention to core belief number 2. We believe family and community involvement is critical to student success. And commitment number 2, we will foster connection for families and community to support student learning. We certainly believe in connecting with our students, their families, and our community stakeholders. Dr. Davis, that concludes what I've prepared, and I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Knowlton. Mr. Chair, that concludes what we have prepared, but we remain available for any discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Knowlton. Ms. Cobb?
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just have believed this whole time that communication with our community and employees was going to be so critical because there were so many moving parts and so much going on. And just thank you for all of that. It's so much information. I know it can seem a little overwhelming, but it's so important for our community to stay informed about what's going on. And I have to give a huge shout out to our communications team. They are so talented, and I'm just always blown away just by the professionalism that everything they post is just amazing. I'm technologically challenged myself, so I'm very impressed by the work that our communications team does. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Dr. Nutt, did you have anything? Ms. Pope?
Yes, thank you for that. I'm so impressed with our website, and as Ms. Cobb said, our communications team is truly next to none. And how thorough the information is really unmatched. So I'm really, really grateful for this platform, all of these platforms. But the website is just so user-friendly, and I'm really grateful for all of the work that's gone into making that happen for our families.
Thank you, Mrs. Pope. Mrs. Edwards?
Thank you for that information, Dr. Knowlton. I didn't see anything, I didn't see you say anything about the website for parents or citizens to view if they want to attend this meeting or any of our meetings, since they're open to the public now with maximum numbers.
Yes, ma'am, that was...
And the reason I'm saying that because I did get a call that it took 5 steps. Somebody told me it was 5 steps before they could actually get to the area where they wanted to reserve a seat for tonight's meeting. So someone that's not technologically savvy will probably have a difficult time. So I just want to ask that you all look into that to make it easier for those citizens that are not tech savvy.
Sure, thank you.
And we all know about that 130 videos, right, JD? And David. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Thank you, Dr. Knowlton. We'll now move into the next section of our agenda, which is C2, our July 2020 construction report by Mr. Malcolm. Dr. Davis.